You're listening to The Artist Athlete, episode 145. Oh, this podcast? This podcast here? This podcast is dedicated to CIRCUS. It's a place for professionals in the industry to share their stories, viewpoints, and information, and a place for outsiders to get a sneak peek into this world. Hey, friends, fans, and foes. I'm Shannon McKenna, and I'm the host of the Artist Athlete podcast. I'm just feeling punchy today. If you want to know why, little behind the scenes, little BTS for you. It's over on patreon.com/theartistathlete. That's where I give updates about my life, what's going on, what's happening. And also, even if you don't care about my life, it's a great place to go to support the podcast. This is an independent podcast. We don't have a big production company behind us. It's just a totally normal woman sitting on her bathroom floor and a team of a talented editor and an assistant producer. So to help me help them, please, patreon.com/theartistathlete is the place to go. Again, that's patreon.com/theartistathlete. My guest today is Isis Clegg-Vinell. After a period of wise deliberation, Isis decided at the ripe old age of 2.5 that she wanted to be a ballerina and was on stage. She swiftly took up gymnastics and became a national and international champion in acrobatic gymnastics. She competed for Great Britain for 3 years before retiring and enrolling in the National Circus School in London. There she met and formed an acrobatic partnership with Nathan Price. They traveled the world as a duo for 13 years, working for companies such as the Seven Fingers and Cirque du Soleil, and teaching partner acrobatics. During the pandemic lockdowns, Isis began training duo trapeze with Cornelius Atkinson, and the two of them, along with Nathan, teamed up to create the acrobatic trio, Trio Vertex. Their work together won the Gold Prize at Young Stage this year in 2022, and they are currently in Chicago performing at Cabaret Zazu. Isis is also a lifelong vegan and environmentalist. 2 things of note before we get into the interview. First of all, I interviewed Isis's bass, then her only bass, Nathan Price, back in 2018. He's on episode 34. Second of all, I was nervous to edit and produce this episode because I really wanted to do Isis some justice after the weird edit Trio Vertex got when they went on Britain's Got Talent. We talk about it in the interview, but I won't be linking to it in the show notes because I think it's stupid and there are far better places to see Trio Vertex's work on platforms that will actually benefit her and her collaborators. Those videos will be in the show notes. And don't get me wrong, I love me some drama, and I'm definitely not above using clickbait as a marketing strategy. But when you have some of the best artists in the world in front of you, how are you going to line them up and focus on who's dating who? Like, come on, Britain's Got Talent, you can do better than that. Or maybe you can't, but I can. So Isis, thank you for trusting me enough to come on the show. I hope this platform is sufficient to tell at least a portion of your story. And for the rest of you, friends, fans, and foes, settle on into your splits and enjoy this interview with Isis Ramona Oriole Clegg-Vinell. Will you say your full name for me so I have it on and I won't say it wrong when I do the introduction?
My full name or just my first and second names?
Both? Wait, no, your full name. What's your full name, Isis?
Oh, it goes on and on. My first name is Isis. My surname is Clegg-Vinell. But I also have 2 middle names, Ramona Oriole. And I was born in a town called Tunbridge Wells. So, yeah, but Isis Ramona Oriole Clegg-Vinell is my fully fleshed out name.
Isis Ramona Oriole Clegg-Vinell.
Correct.
Love that.
My bloody parents.
What are your parents like?
They're awesome. I love my parents to bits. They are what people would call sort of eccentric, for sure. My dad was quite a punk. My mum, hippie.
That's the vibe I get, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm named after 2 Bob Dylan songs, so I mean, But they're also quite distant in age. Not distant, but there's 9 years between them, and my mum is the elder of them. So I always sort of thought growing up that I had a really old mum and a really young dad, whereas of course nowadays, like 9 years is not considered. Growing up, it sort of felt like that. But also being born vegan, of course, at a time when not many people were vegan at all, and then obviously deciding to raise myself and my brother vegan. So that was also, you know, that instilled the sort of everyone thinking, oh, weird hippie family. Of course, because, you know, it was only the weird hippies that considered things like vegetarianism or veganism and environmental issues. And
yeah, sure.
There was always a focus on like zero waste in our house and never leaving food and being very eco-conscious. You know, my mum would reuse plastic bags and repurpose them for something else, and I'd be sort of thinking, well, why are my sandwiches in this at school? This is so embarrassing. It says carrots on. And of course now, as a sort of eco-conscious adult myself, I'm thinking, it was just vegetables in that bag. Why does it matter? It's just reusing plastic. It's being kind to the environment. Whereas, of course, growing up, I didn't want to.
Well, you didn't want to be the weird kid.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I was vegetarian for 14 years and vegan for 4 of those years. I remember really struggling until I lived in New York City to like figure out how to feed myself. How do you feed yourself when you're on the road as much as you are?
It really depends on where you are, and I realise that's not the most helpful of answers, but there's so many places that I have toured around the world that have really surprised me with their options, and other places that are just absolutely shit for vegan options. I remember, like, even when we did the cruise ship contract several years ago, there's this app, I'm not sure if you know about it, it's called Happy Cow, and it is a huge database of every vegan restaurant on the globe that somebody has obviously inputted into the database, pictures, reviews, all that sort of opening times. And yeah, we were on this cruise ship, and I thought, as a joke, at the next port that we pulled up at, I would just open up the app and see if anything was there, as a joke. And there was a vegan restaurant in this particular location. And of course, like, all the cast wanted to come and check it out, and we ended up being regulars every time we ported there, which was, I think, twice a month or so, and we'd always go back to the same place. I think the main thing is just having been vegan for so long, knowing the things that I could carry around with me that would be very, very simple. For example, a vegetable pate spread or something. I know that wherever I am, I'm going to have access to bread. I might not have access to a vegan butter or even peanut butter or sandwich slices, you know, those sort of deli sandwich slices that are vegan. Even if I don't have something like that, you will always have bread. And so I can always like form some sort of sandwich and sustenance.
So who are you? State for the record who you are. That was quite a tangent. I appreciate it. Who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? We said my name though.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess you're not just your name, right? Like.
True. Yeah. I guess there's a little bit more to me. Gosh, how do you describe yourself other than your name? That's quite a tricky one. I don't think I've ever considered that. I guess I would say first and foremost that I'm a circus artist. That's been my life for quite a while now. Not that it was a path that I ever had my sort of heart set on or anything. I certainly didn't see Cirque du Soleil when I was a kid and think that's where I'm going to end up. But yeah, here I am. That was a career path I decided when I was 18. But since then, of course, it's been my life.
So what are you touring? What do you do? Like, as a circus artist, what's your act?
So for 13 years, hand-to-hand was my main discipline, a hand-to-hand flyer. And for 13 years, working in the same partnership with Nathan. We met at circus school when we were 18, and decided from there to study the discipline together. Graduated it. And
what brought you to circus school?
So I was a gymnast.
Okay.
I was a competitive gymnast, and I was...
Artistic or?
Sports acrobatics.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had done artistic in my...
Can you explain what sports acrobatics?
So artistic gymnastics is the discipline that everyone recognises. It's the apparatus, so it's the bars, beam, floor and vault, and of course the extra couple of disciplines if you are a male gymnast. So that's artistic, and I trained that from being a young child until the age of 10, 11. Yeah, I'd got in a reasonable level of that. I was sort of regional champion, and then I was moving club to further my career, and I walked into this new gymnasium, and they had this group of gymnasts on the floor all working together and standing on top of each other and doing handstands on each other. And the artistic coach is, trying to show me around the apparatus and walk me through to the bars, and my head was just sort of being pulled in the other direction, saying, what is that? What are they doing over there? And at the time in the UK it was called sports acrobatics. And I looked at my mum and I said, I want to do that. And the coach of that team obviously heard me, and she said, come around the corner, showed me a video, pulled out the old TV and video recorder and put some videos of past competitions, and I said, this is what I want to do. And my mum, she questioned it more from the sense of, you have to work with other people and you have to then be committed, and you can't not show up to training. You have to, you're involving other people now, so it's not just all about you. And I was like, I want to give it a go. This is...
Oh, interesting. So her perspective was like coming from a place of like, could you be responsible and have the discipline to show up for your partnership?
I think it wasn't necessarily that she thought I couldn't, but more from my parents and my mother in particular have run a sports team for 25 years. And it's a team sport. They run an inline hockey club. So I also grew up playing that, of course, with my mom being the manager and my dad.
Who are these people? These hippie vegans running an inline hockey club.
It's such a niche sport in the UK as well. But you said, so obviously my mom was always very aware of team players letting people down, not showing up to training. If you didn't show up, as part of the team on a Sunday for matches, then the entire team was down. So she's always been very, very aware of that. She's also someone that, even if our team were to win, she's the one trying to go and console the other team because she feels so absolutely awful that someone else has lost. So it's really a balance. Anyway, that's more where she was coming from, I think. And I was like, I don't care. This is what I want to do. And so I joined that club and that section of the gymnastics. So that was the beginnings of me being an acrobat, I guess. And I competed in a women's pair as a flyer for 2 years, and had a really successful time, a really great relationship with my base, Kate, at the time. And we...
Do you get to pick your base in sport acro? Okay.
No, you do not get to pick your base. We got put together and luckily got on really well. I would stay at her house on a Friday night and we'd have a sleepover because we had early training the next morning and stuff. Nice. And she lived more locally than I did. So we had a really good time, and then she decided to go off to uni. So that was the sort of end of that. And that's when I was placed in a mixed pair. So more typically, I guess, what people consider hand-to-hand. The sort of mixed pair is... I would probably say there's more male-female partnerships in the hand-to-hand world in circus. I guess men's pairs. So yeah, that was me starting to be in a mixed pair again, obviously a flyer, and we competed together for 4 years. We were part of Team GB, did many international competitions, and were on Team GB for I think 3 years, and then we sort of retired that partnership, and I moved to another club where I became a women's middle. So I was a base for a couple of years.
What? That means there is someone smaller than you in the world?
There is. What was I? I was 16. That was 16 to 18, and I had an 11-year-old flyer who I would throw around for double somersaults and whatnot. which is strange. It's of course I talk about it these days. In gymnastics, it was very normal because I was a 16-year-old flyer retiring from a mixed pair and considered over the hill. So that was the sort of natural progression. So then, fast forward to starting at Circus Space and meeting Nathan, and he'd been part of their youth program. He sort of kind of knew a little bit more what he wanted to do. I think he auditioned with handstands but wanted to do hand-to-hand. And I, of course, was 18, had come from the competitive world of gymnastics where I was considered too big and was actively competing still as a middle, because I started at the uni whilst I was still training in the evenings as a gymnast, and I had the first term of uni where I was still competing, actually.
Okay.
So I was training at circus school during the day, jumping on the train at 4 p.m.
Wow.
Running down to Kent to do 3 hours of training, get myself back up to London ready for 8 a.m. the next morning. Yeah, it only lasted a term.
Yeah, right? I can imagine. Do you think your time doing that middling helped you as a flyer?
Interesting. Possibly. I think for sure it helped me with the teaching in the past, sort of over the past eight or so years that I've done coaching. It certainly helped me from that perspective. I think it's certainly one of those queries where if you're being coached by a flyer, you might not trust them or think that what they're saying necessarily is on point. But the fact that I also did have that, I would say, sort of brief time as a base myself, gives you this sort of, not validation. Validation is the wrong word, but the right.
I know what you're talking about.
Of being able to say what you're, make people think, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about.
Merit. God, why can't we think of these words? No, but there's a better word.
There is. I can't think of it.
People are screaming into their phones right now. Being like, it's this. We'll think of it later. All right. So you and Nathan got together as a hand-to-hand duo. You've been working together for 13 years. When you first got together, did you have that discussion or that understanding? Because I know so often, just from seeing it at the National Circus School, because I live in Montreal, so I hear about this all the time, where they'll go through the program together and then one of the partnership will decide that they want to focus on handstands or they get jobs other places. Did you guys have a discussion about that from the beginning, or how did...
We didn't, and I know exactly what you mean, and it often makes me really sad because I see exactly what you're talking about, or partnerships not necessarily lasting after graduation. And I don't know if we just got really fucking lucky, or if it was to do with the fact that we essentially chose each other. We were not placed in a partnership. It was his decision. He wanted to do, duo work. Admittedly, I didn't want to do hand-to-hand to start with. Like I mentioned, I thought I was over the hill, asking to be a flyer again. I was saying, are you crazy? You want to chuck me around for an entire career? You must be fucking mad. But of course, the circus world did not see me how the gymnastic world saw me at the time, of course, and I recognise that now. But I admittedly wanted to do something different. I was looking up at the aerial stuff. I did a trial on Chinese pole and on aerial hoop. And I saw the cradle in the corner. And so I made Nathan climb up. I was like, I want to try this. He's saying, I think we should do hand-to-hand. It'd be really great to do this together. And I was thinking, get up there. I want to be in the air. Do something completely different to what I've done for the majority of my life. And he did. He went up and hooked into the cradle, and I hung off him for approximately 1.2 seconds before he dropped me and said, never again. So that was our short fleeting. We decided on hand-to-hand after a couple of terms when we had to make that decision. And I think I was a little bit reluctant at first because, like I said, it's what I'd been doing. And I thought, in all honesty, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing, coaching this poor boy to sort of be a base, and it's going to not set me back, but I'm not going to be moving forward. I'm not going to be doing the technique that I've just come from.
Right, because you came in with all this experience and Nathan didn't have it, so you basically had to train your porter.
Yeah, essentially. And so that reluctant sort of feeling for sure was very prominent in the beginning. But there was also the idea that actually you do know this, you are pretty good at it, and so why not turn it into your career? Why spend 3 years trying to train in something completely different that you might not actually be that good at even a few years down the line? So why not stick with what you know and see where it goes? And I'm glad I did.
I think that's super smart to leverage that. Do you ever work with anyone else?
Now we do. I haven't been able to say that for almost 13 years.
Well, I want to be like a little more clear about the question. Do you ever work with anyone else in hand-to-hand?
So it is an interesting question because all the time, the short answer is no. Right. I've never worked with anyone in my circus career except for Nathan. And we do get it asked, like, especially if we're teaching lots of workshops or jurors that we come across on our travels. And it's like, will you just pop up and let's try something? Or a student asks, well, if you do it with me, maybe you'll be able to tell me what I'm doing wrong. Or can we just do this for a photo on Instagram? And my main reservation is getting hurt. Physically, of course, is what I mean, but it's that trust. We've spent 13 years building up the trust that we have, and we essentially know each other inside out in terms of what we feel like, how his grip is, how my foot hold, my ankle stability, where I'm going to place my weight when I'm on him in a too high, or if I'm standing in his hands, or if I'm in a... We're just so familiar with each other because we've worked together for so long. And the idea of me just jumping up on somebody whose body is a stranger, it scares me.
Even if that person were super qualified and had all of the, the CV that you guys have, right?
As a play, absolutely. There are people in the industry who I respect like madly and know that they're shit hot. I would for sure jump up on them for fun or in a training situation. In a work setting, if Nathan was, let's say he was unavailable for a gig and someone else was like, oh, I'll step in for 2 weeks, let's do these tricks. The tricks, even if they can do them with their partner for 10 years and I can do these with Nathan for 10 years, it still takes time to work each other out and know what each other's body is going to do. It's that calibration that I don't have with anyone else.
Along those lines, when you guys are taking work, also, I should say, I'm skipping over a lot of things because I've interviewed Nathan before on the podcast. Yeah. So there's like large chunks of things that I feel like if you want to, we'll drop that episode in the show notes and it'll all come back around. I have some faith in it. But how do you and Nathan, because you're decide to take work or not take work? Do you guys have a metric for that kind of the business side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I said a little earlier on that I think the fact that we are able to still work together, maybe it's luck, maybe it's the fact that we chose to work with each other that's made for a fairly successful career. In terms of how we make decisions, I think it's been pretty fortunate, our situation of we graduated and within 6 months we had a contract with the Fingers and of course both of us were absolutely dying to do that. They're huge inspiration, that company, to the two of us. Nathan had seen them in times when he was in his teens, when they'd come to London, and I'd not seen shows like Traces yet and things like that until I was at circus school. But he'd seen them growing up, and so that was obviously a huge honour to graduate and then get offered a contract with them. So that happened very naturally. Any of the other big contracts that we've done since, I think they've all been sort of goals, bucket list sort of moments, if you like. And then when we're between contracts, the fact that both of us are based in London, coming back here to the city and doing the cabaret scene, doing some corporate stuff. Obviously, there's a really great network of people here. So we love to sort of step back in and do the dinner, theatre, variety, nightlife stuff here. There's not really been a project that's come along where we've been offered something and one of us is like, absolutely not. We've always pretty much been on the same page in terms of our career goals and places and people that we want to work with. There's been a couple of times over the years when maybe one of us has been less happy on a contract and not as in love with it as the other person, and that's been a discussion that's been dealt with at the time, and it's maybe sort of a situation of, right, well, if you stick this one out, then I owe you for the next time, the next time you don't want to do something, but I do. So we try and like make sure it's even in terms of that.
Yeah, you have these kinds of contracts because y'all throw some pretty big tricks. Some pretty major shit. You're kind of a badass, Isis. And I know that those tricks don't always go well.
That's right.
In the times when those tricks don't go well, how do you recover?
Oh, I think there's just a weird thing within me that I guess the most obvious word is determination. I don't like to be wrong. I don't like things going wrong. I like to be in control of situations. And I'm trying to be, a little bit more go with the flow. It sounds very contradictory to my upbringing of hippie punk parents.
Yeah, right?
But I think when things go wrong, it's that attitude of get the fuck back up and let's go, because that's not the end. And that wasn't my decision to have something finished there. It's happened several times in my career. I've had some pretty nasty injuries, and it's just focusing on the fact that you'll get better and that you will recover, and that if you just keep on going and acting as if nothing really happened. But I have in my head the moment when I had my arm accident in 2000 and, when was it? 2003. And I was, after I'd got it, 3 weeks in hospital from that injury.
What happened?
And I dislocated my elbow and wrist in a gymnastics accident. I fell from about 12 foot upside down and stuck my arm out behind me, which I learned the hard way was not the thing that one should do. But it basically, my elbow dislocated pretty horrifically. My radial head came out of the wrist socket, the muscle and membrane in my forearm tore. And I had to have an external fixator fitted for about 8 months, maybe. I had the metal work on. So rather gory pins and frames sticking out of
Frankenstein style.
Out of my arm.
Sure.
So of course you can see the
great scars.
Great battle wounds. It's had many a surgery so it's looking its nicest now, but it used to be much wider, and I've had lots of reconstructive operations to make it look a little bit better, mainly for actual use. It was pinned for about 15 years maybe onto the bicep, which meant I didn't have full range of the muscle. So, but the occasion that I was talking about is the fact that I came out of hospital, and the day after I came out of hospital with all this metal work on, I went to the gym. I said to my mum, I need to be back in the gym. And I went to the gym and I was doing dish rocks and I was sitting in Japana and stretching my straddle, and I just needed to be in that environment as soon as I possibly could. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was tricking my mind to thinking, nothing's wrong with me, or maybe it was, I don't know what it was. Lots of people would obviously think I was batshit crazy, but I just knew that I needed to be in the gym. Otherwise I wouldn't ever step foot in there again. And that would make me incredibly sad if I didn't still do what I loved to do. So
yeah, if you think about it, that's your normal. So it would be insane not to try to find some normalcy, especially in something like that happening. Mm-hmm. Shit, yeah. I'm just like, yeah, that's a lot. No, and it's, so when something goes wrong, I guess we've talked about it from kind of like your personality or an emotional level, and then do you all then you video everything you do. So you and Nathan go back and look at it. And then do you break it down process-wise? You just are like, right, throw it again. Does it depend on the incident?
It does. I would say that we've actually been pretty smart in our training all throughout school. Nathan was a stickler for filming absolutely everything, and it drove me insane, to say the least, in that we would do a trick and he would walk over to the tripod and he would pause it and he'd rewind and he would watch it back, and a lot of self-coaching for years and years and years. And at the time, like I say, it was just like, oh.
Did you have a coach?
We did. We had a couple of different coaches during our time at school, but only for a couple of hours a week. And then in our third year, there wasn't really a hand-to-hand coach, but a dedicated hand-to-hand coach. The coaches also taught other things like handstands and swinging trapeze and stuff. So it was a little bit hard to get a coach like focused on us. So, you know, like I said, lots of self-coaching for a long time. But in hindsight, that for sure made us the artists that we are today, in that we were very pedantic and particular, and Nathan was very much focused on his form and being in the best alignment that he could possibly be and lifting correctly, and that's how he got into ollie lifting and things like that as well. And so essentially training every single moment to the best that you possibly can means less failure. Yeah, so I mean, we could talk all day about that.
That's really amazing for people to hear, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it does. It makes a difference, the sort of winging it, or just, you know, try again without having any reference of what it looks like or where the weight maybe fell. It was incredibly useful to film everything. So, yeah, we've for sure had some incidences over the past 13 years, but nothing that's been mad tragic, and nothing that we've not been able to overcome or get back up and you know, go again. So even the moments, there's for sure a ton of bail videos that no doubt lots of the listeners have seen, but again, you try something, it bails, you pull the crash mats in, you get a spot in, you do you implement all of the safety aspects that you can to mitigate
your risk. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Makes sense. So I asked you if you've ever worked with anyone else, and you said, now I can answer that I do. Can you explain that answer?
I sure can. So now we work as a trio with Cornelius Atkinson, who's also my partner in life. Yeah, and it's a crazy little project that came out of the pandemic, really, in that in the UK, we were only allowed to train in bubbles, so a certain number of people could train. Me and Cornelius were living together. He'd come off a Cirque du Soleil show where he'd been doing duo trapeze and hand to trap and didn't have a partner to train with. And myself and Nathan, obviously, were still training hand to hand, but could do with someone lunging us. So we sort of traded. I tried to sort of be Corn's flyer for a little bit and pretend to be an aerialist, and he would lunge myself and Nathan doing hand to hand. And it just developed from there of the easiest way, for example, to pop me up onto the trapeze up to Cornelius was climbing up on Nathan and him lifting me there on my feet. And we were just like, hang on a minute. Those two had done hand to trap in that show, the show where we met Cornelius, actually, Crystal. And so they'd both touched that discipline before, more than touched it. They were huge parts of that show.
Right.
Of that number. And I started having a little bit of fun with it, and we started to see what we could come up with, and that developed into the three of us forming a trio and developing that hand to trap work.
It's super nice because it now allows you, that pandemic times are over, be with your life partner and like travel and tour. And
I'm very lucky. Yeah, it's crazy how well it's formed out, really, because I get to do what I love. I get to do this new thing, like I mentioned a little bit previously, of my original goal at circus school being, aerial stuff, and Nathan pulling me back down to the ground for hand to hand. And now in this weird crazy circumstance, I'm getting to do both, which, yeah, it's like I couldn't be luckier.
So when I Google Trio Vertex, which is your y'all's trio, the first YouTube video that comes up has a little description, and I think I wrote it down. Oh yeah, it's girl, which I hate because you're a grown-ass woman, but here we go. Girl dances with ex-boyfriend and current partner in acrobatic group.
Oh my God, it's so cringe.
How do you feel about that narrative?
Oh, do you know what?
Because I could actually see it going in two different ways. Like, I feel like the clickbaity kind of like, because you and Nathan also dated and then broke up, but it was a long time ago, and now you're with your life partner, Cornelius, and everything is grand.
Yeah.
But I could see how that drama could be clickbaity and actually like give you guys a little bit of like a leg up because of that.
It's interesting to hear you say that. I think the main thing we learned from doing that particular TV show and subsequently clickbait articles or videos with that title coming out, for sure the first thought was, what the fuck have we done? In all honesty, I think we sort of opened ourselves up to the lion's den in a sense of not really understanding where society is in terms of being in a working relationship with somebody that you once were romantic with. In the circus world, I think it's fair to say that it's a lot more normalized.
Sure.
And we are close in friendships, in relationships, in how close we work with our bodies together. And it's just not a thing. Whereas to go on television, the majority of people we have now learned are maybe not quite there yet in terms of their understanding, and more specifically understanding that you can have been romantic with somebody and you don't have to cut them out of your life. Mm-hmm. I think in sort of my experience in relationships in general throughout my life, I've been pretty fortunate to not have had terrible breakups, to have amicable romantic relationships come to an end and not ever hate my partner or now ex-partners. And not everyone is that fortunate. And I recognize that, and lots of people, when you do break up with somebody romantic.
I would also say maybe not everyone is that emotionally evolved, or not anyone maybe has the tools that you have in some way.
Yeah. I think that's a fair observation. It is true though. I've never broken up with someone and hated them and deleted every photo that I have with them and gotten rid of every gift that they've ever given me and never mentioned their name. It's just never happened in my life. And so for me, in front of, on the television, for me to admit that somebody that is also my business partner, or we also used to date when we were, in our teens and early 20s, like it's like, so what? That's completely irrelevant now. That was a very long time ago. Are we not allowed to carry on liking each other just because you end things romantically with someone doesn't mean that the friendship has to die? Right.
I guess the more interesting narrative is the dramatic one.
Yeah, and of course, like you mentioned, it's clickbait. Everyone loves the drama. I completely understand why, if you're trying to get clicks.
Even before I watched the video, I was like, did they do this intent? Like, because on one side, I'd be like, I respect it. It's smart on one side to like get that. But it also, I think, robs you all of what the piece says. Because people are already putting that layer on it.
Absolutely. And that's the disappointing part of that is, and myself and Cornelius have certainly noted that the particular video you're talking about, I think, has over 20 million views now, but I've not shared it once. It's not something that I'm mad proud of because of the way that they chose to write the narrative about us and then subsequently put a different choice of music over the top to something as an artist that you've choreographed and obviously spent time on, and then your art is being heavily edited. And so of course the frustration with that particular thing was, it's an interesting one. But I had in my head, well, surely people, I don't know, snog at the Christmas office party and then have to go in and see the person at work. Surely things like this happen all the time, but we, you know, the reaction that it got was like, oh, we misjudged this. And it's to us, to the three of us and to people that know us, it's laughable. You know, we crack jokes about it. They were not ready for the jokes. Yeah, it was an odd perspective to have when we hadn't quite realised just how much draw that particular moment in our lives that had absolutely nothing to do with us as a trio, of course.
Right.
Something that happened 12 years ago. I don't think anyone else goes into work and is sort of talking about something that happened 12 years ago. So because it feels so distant and in the past, it was a bit like, no, this is our situation. We are three friends, really good friends, and two of us have been together for almost 3 years. What's the big deal kind of thing?
It was cringy. I don't know you all very well, and it was cringy for me to watch.
Yeah, well, it was just so heavily edited and so focused on something that happened when neither of us, all three of us, didn't know each other. It's like, I don't know what you were doing 15 years ago or a particular moment that happened in your life, but it's as if someone brought that up. And the other thing was we'd been there all day and none of that had been spoken about. And so when we stepped on
did you tell them at all?
No.
So they dug that up
yeah.
from somewhere.
Yeah, they will have searched the internet. They do. Now we realise just how far back they delve. But it was one of those like, you weren't going to give us a heads up about what you've snooped out, huh?
Damn.
But no, not
That's
at all.
That's a sneak attack.
Yeah. No, I'm super proud to work with the both of them, and
of course,
and love what we do and what we have.
Would you advise artists go on a show like Britain's Got Talent?
It depends what you want from it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how in trouble.
What did you all want from it?
So that it came at a time of heavy disappointment for us because we had worked on our hand to trapeze number for 6 months. We had dedicated 2 months going over to Montreal and training and self-funding this huge piece with the intention of performing it at Cirque du Soleil. And 2 weeks before, the festival was pulled. Mm-hmm. And it was incredibly devastating for us. Mm-hmm. Obviously emotionally, obviously physically, financially, just so much felt like it was, gone down the gutter. And we had been asked to do BGT, I think the year before or something, and it was never something that was on our radar, and we were always unsure about the fact that it's an unpaid gig and the repercussions that come with things like that, and working for free, and it's just never something that we'd ever do or done. But with the disappointment of what happened in January and feeling like we had absolutely nothing on our plates, and it was like, maybe this would be an opportunity. At least it would be some brilliant TV footage to come out of it. And so if you have a particular thing that you want from something, yes, that might be an occasion to work for free, in that sense. And I think for us that was enough for us. And since then, lots and lots of opportunities have come up which have been paid gigs. So it's certainly not something I regret doing by any means.
Yeah.
But
it shows how decision making happens sometimes, and how it happens out of emotion. Or it happens like you make the choice because you need a win. Versus like actually thinking like, is this going to make sense for us?
Yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah. It's all part of it for sure. It's got its stigmas attached to it. I know lots of people might disagree with doing it, but also it's that horrible phrase that we're all way too familiar with of working for exposure. Mm-hmm. But then you look at some people who have done things like AGT and the exposure, and therefore the exposure turns into a fully fledged career.
Well, but I think that's real exposure. That's not like doing an event where 100 people show up and you're like, and the booker's like, but it's good exposure. No, this is millions of people.
Exactly. Yeah, there's levels, of course.
Seeing you. Yeah. You've done Young Stage. You won there.
Me too.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I got to see the piece
I know.
twice. It was beautiful both times.
I can't believe that was the first time we met.
That's right. Yeah.
That was magical. I can't speak enough. I can't give the festival enough praise, really. It was a very smooth, well-operated machine that happened there. We were very fortunate to go and do it and be selected to participate. We had a great time. We met great people. And to have our work recognised by such a panel. Some big names were involved on the decision making, as well as all the other awards and people that were giving out prizes. There were lots and lots of people there who I hugely respect and are obviously big names in the industry. So to have our piece recognised on such a scale was probably the biggest honour in my career.
That's really saying something, because even as you're listing all of this, I'm like, but you've got the Seven Fingers contract, but you've done the Cirque du Soleil, like check. How can you like...
Yeah, but it all, as proud as I am of the several shows that I've done on behalf of the Fingers and the one contract I've done with Soleil, as proud as I am of those achievements, they were some of the foundations of what we just did just now. So obviously they mean a lot because they're also tied into where it brought us and what we were able to do. Without the Soleil contract, we wouldn't have met Cornelius. Without having worked with the Fingers for the best part of 10 years, we wouldn't have had the connections and the fact that the piece was directed by Shana Carroll and we were able to use the facilities in Montreal to the beginnings of creating that piece. The coaches as well, all of that obviously led to our trio being formed, and it's all it's all heavily influenced by everything we've done in our career thus far.
And where do you see yourself going next? I don't know if I like this question, but I want to ask it because you talked earlier about being 18 and being like, I'm old. And I think you probably still have a good 15 years left or so. But where do you see the trajectory of your career going next, and how do you and Nathan have conversations about that now?
Yeah, so we more or less take it as it comes, really.
Sure.
We've never really projected and said, right, this is what we're going to do for the next 3 years and we're going to just focus on X, Y, Z. It's more an opportunity comes up for a certain amount of time, we go and do it, and towards the last quarter of that period in time, we start focusing on the next thing, whether that's blasting our promo material out, writing to everyone we know in the industry, saying, hey, we're free from this particular date. And we've sort of always rolled like that. Of course, our main focus right now is the trio. We have a contract coming up, the three of us, where we get to perform hand to trap, and Cornelius doing his straps, because of course he's a very excellent straps artist, and myself and Nathan will be doing skating as well.
Oh, cool.
So we've got these acts now that we're able to offer as a trio. So yeah, we've got that contract coming up, and then towards the end of that being a thing, we will obviously look to whatever's next, and hopefully something comes along.
I feel like, Isis, that it will come along. I think that you're, based on your past, I think the future is pretty bright.
I would like to think so. I mean, whether it's 15 years I've got in, I'm not sure how spot on you are with that. I would love to keep going forever. Obviously, it's the age-old question that every artist and circus artist always gets asked, how long will you be doing?
Yeah.
The truth is none of us know, but as long as possible would be my goal, because I'm not sure what else I'd be doing, and yeah, I'm still loving it.
Well, we love watching you, so
Thank you
it
so
works out really well. Final question.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to yourself at the beginning of your career?
You don't always need to be so angry.
What?
No, I think
You don't always need to be so.
for sure I was an angry little shithead in my late teens, for sure.
What were you angry about?
Oh, I don't know.
What is any teenager angry about?
For sure, it is fair to say that as the years have gone by, I have gotten a lot more forgiving and understanding and giving more of a chance to situations, not necessarily people as well, but more the sort of situation. I think I could get rather riled up and opinionated, whereas maybe I could have just let it go a little bit more often, because it wasn't always there's no like mad big incident that happened or anything, but no, it's for sure an observation. I said it a couple of weeks ago to the boys. I said, for sure I'm way more chilled out now than I used to be.
Don't be so angry. You don't have to.
Don't be so angry. Don't let everything get to you straight away.
Mm-hmm.
I think lots of things would get to me straight away, and I think if I'd have let it settle a little bit more, then and come back to it the next morning, I might have had a little bit more.
A few less
smooth
apologies
time.
to make. Amazing. Thanks so much for the time, Isis. This is awesome.
More than welcome. It's been a blast.
Thanks for listening, friends, fans, and foes. I'll talk at you next week. In the meantime, go to patreon.com/theartistathlete and show some love, send some support, just like these fine Patreons that you're about to hear the voices of right now. The Artist Athlete podcast is supported solely by donations from people like you. Here's what some of those people have to say.
Hi, my name is Noah and I do hand balancing. Hi, my name is Woody and I do Leo. Thank you for listening to the Artist Athlete podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Dominique, a ground acrobat, trapeze artist, and coach, currently bringing circus to the extremely cold but very beautiful Northern Ontario, Canada. Circus has changed my life and I'm so grateful to everyone in this community. Find me on Instagram at DomUpsideDown or my website domupsidedown.com.
Aloha, my name is Beth Russell and I live on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii. I am an aerial artist and movement instructor specializing in chakra yoga to keep me balanced and grounded. I play with silks, trapeze, lyra, rope, acro, aerial yoga and dance, slacklining, pole, bungee, and climbing. Really anything that goes up and allows me to explore 3D space. You can find my dedicated aerial page on Instagram at Maui Aerialist. If you find yourself coming to Maui, let's play.
Hey there, friends, fans, and enemies. This is Chris Alston, Patreon of the Artist Athlete podcast, straps artist and lyra performer and acrobat out of Greenville, South Carolina. So if you're ever passing through, make sure to stop in and see me and my friends. We have a wonderful space and we'd love to see you.
Hi, my name is Erica Lee. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an aerialist. I teach performing arts to elementary school during the day and do pole and swing and rope by night. I really, really like the Artist Athlete podcast because it gives me a lot of circus goals to look forward to. It gives me a lot of insight on what's going on around the world in circus, and that's why I'm Patreon.
Hello all. Thank you for tuning in to the Artist Athlete podcast. I am Opal Schwartz from Minneapolis, Minnesota. If you're ever in the cities, feel free to stop by the Aviary Minneapolis. It's a great time. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and goodbye.
Hey there, artists and athletes. This is Andy Smith, owner and artistic director at Saltaire Circus School in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. And I want to thank you for contributing to the Artist Athlete podcast. If you ever find yourself down in Florida, come check us out. Whether you're an artist, athlete, or someone ordinary just looking to be extraordinary, we got a place for you.